Hi everyone, welcome back to this channel, or welcome if you are new here. I'm Dr. Alan Johnson, and on this channel, I talk about the mind, well-being, productivity, and change for thinkers, makers, and everyone in between. And in this video, I want to talk about this really sort of curious thing that I've been noticing in people in the world around me, that even when they are relaxing, there's still this sense of tension and tightness, and a sense that they're they're sort of behind something, or they need to catch up in something, or they're never really able to fully rest and relax. And maybe that's something that you experience as well, that sort of low hum of anxiety and uncertainty, that maybe you're not working hard enough, that you're not good enough, that you don't actually deserve to rest and relax and recover. So in this video, I want to look at things in a slightly different way. This isn't a productivity system. This isn't another type of planner or morning routine, but it's a deeper reframe, and really specifically a spiritual reframe of time itself. And there are three main things that I want to cover here. First of all, I'm going to look at how our modern view of time was shaped and why our sense of time feels so narrow and feels so transactional. And then after that, we'll move on to explore what various wisdom traditions have to say about the nature of time, and ultimately how that changes everything for how we approach our lives. And then finally, I'll share a few short practices about how we can relate to time in a more helpful and more healthy way, because time isn't something that we manage. We spend a lot of time reading about time management or productivity. Time isn't something we manage. Time is something that we live. Time is how we measure our lives, and how we live that time says everything about who we really are. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about where our notions of time have come from. Because I remember once sitting in a strategy meeting when I worked in senior leadership, and someone used the phrase optimizing human capital. Optimizing human capital. And something in me just recoiled. It wasn't out of offense. This was a phrase that I had heard before. I had used the phrase before. But in that particular moment, I had a different type of recognition of what that phrase meant. Because I realized that phrase was simply saying something aloud that much of our culture and much of the time we simply assume. And that is that time is only valuable if it's productive, and that people are only valuable if they're efficient. So that type of mindset then leads to this view that life should be trimmed and measured and monetized, and that message is around us all the time. We carry that message in our bodies. That tightness in our shoulders is a symbol of that. Our overscheduled diaries are a symbol of that. Our self-talk, that voice of the inner critic that says you should be doing more, that sense of guilt in moments of stillness, these are all examples of how we carry that in our body. But that did not start with us. It also didn't start with that person in the meeting who talked about optimizing human capital. It didn't start with your boss or manager. It started much earlier, several hundred years ago, because this Western model of time, a model of time that is linear, that is extractive, that is goal-oriented, has its roots in industrialization and how Western society began to reframe its relationship to the workplace. It's built on an idea that history has a direction, that history is moving forward. This seems really obvious to us today, but this isn't a natural way to think about history. And as we'll see in a moment, it isn't the way that most cultures think about history. It's this idea that we have that history is a forward momentum, and that we must constantly be moving forward and making progress to exist, to be alive. Because if the nature of time is that it is a constant forward momentum, then we are somehow not part of time. We are not alive. We are not human. We are not meaningful if we are not also moving forward. That's not time as reality. That is time as industrialized pressure. And that creates burnout, not just physical burnout. And I'm sure many of us have experienced, that physical exhaustion from time to time, but even more commonly, and perhaps a little bit more subtly, it leads to that sense of existential burnout, the kind where you wake up in the morning wondering whether you are living your life or you are just kind of showing up to work and doing the things that you need to do, or showing up for your family and doing the things you need to do, or showing up for your spouse or partner and doing the things that you need to do. That type of existential burnout is really when we can begin to lean into our spiritual practice and the teachings of wisdom traditions that came before us. Because the only real way that we can rethink the nature of time in healthier and more helpful ways is if we rethink who we are. But the great thing is, the great wisdom traditions of the world have had a lot to say about this. If you look across traditions, Judaism, Hinduism, Taoism, indigenous traditions, you start to see an entirely different orientation to time. In these traditions, time is not a resource that you spend. Time is a field that you enter. It is cyclical. It is alive. Time is relational. It invites participation and not just performance. So let's take the Jewish concept of Sabbath. The world stops not because you don't have anything to do, but because stopping is an act of spiritual alignment. And the point isn't to rest so you can work harder tomorrow. The point is that the rest itself is a form of worship, a recalibration of the soul in the direction of the divine. This appears also in Hindu cosmology, where time unfolds in these great ages, these yugas as they're called. They each have their own type of character, and they're not driven by urgency. There's not this rush to the next era and the next age and the next age. They unfold in a unique rhythm. So to live well in that tradition is not to dominate time, but to harmonize with time. You don't resist the season or the era that you're in. You let that season or that era shape you. And even more profoundly, in Taoism, time isn't even a separate thing at all. There's only the way, the Tao, that flows through everything, encompassing time and being and the nature of reality. And when you align with that flow, so when you stop resisting that flow, you find that things don't happen on time, they happen in time, because time is contained within the nature of the Tao. It's not separate from the experience of the world. And this is a form of spiritual maturity that we have lost in our culture, with a rush since the Enlightenment to systematize, to mechanize, and to optimize not just the external world, but by extension, our psyches and our bodies as well. When we begin to, first of all, recognize the way in which time has been shaped by the world around us, we can begin to, secondly, subtly resist that by learning from the great wisdom traditions that came before us. And this is the type of stuff that interests you, I'll pop a link below to my online 30-day course on Integrative Meditation Level 1, which goes into the fruits of these wisdom traditions in a lot more detail. So hopefully you'll find that helpful on this journey. But I want to now talk about 3 practices that you can draw upon and build out today to help you come into a different relationship with sacred time, and coming into a relationship with time not just as an idea but as a way of being. So first of all, replacing your to-do list with a to-be list. This isn't just sort of a little linguistic thing, but actually even something as subtle as reframing your to-do list as a to-be list can have really quite significant impacts. But it isn't just that. There's actually something else I wanted you to do here. Before you plan your day, ask yourself, who do I want to be today? Not what do I want to achieve today, but who do I want to be today? So the person that you will want to be today is probably going to be the person who makes progress in their job, contributing to the collective within the workplace. The person that you want to be today is probably going to be the person who shows up in caring ways for partners and children and friends and loved ones. The person that you want to be today is probably going to find time for self-care and for nourishing the mind, spirit, and body so that they're able to show up for others and to show up in the way that they contribute to the world through their work. So referring to this as your to-be list rather than your to-do list is really thinking about who you want to be today. Not what you want to achieve, but the kind of presence that you want to bring. Do you want to bring a sense of calm or curiosity or rootedness to how you flow through your day? Then write that down and let it guide your decisions. This isn't about doing less. It's about doing what matters and doing that with intention. You still need to go to work because that's how you contribute to the world around you. You still need to show up in meaningful ways for your partner and for your family and for your friends, because forming bonds and attachments is how we become truly human. So this to-be list isn't about doing less. It's about remembering why we're doing these things in the first place. So the second practice you can take in your today is threshold awareness, what I call threshold awareness, because most of us rush from one task to the next. So we, go from point A to point B to point C. We then get home and we flop on the sofa and we watch Netflix for the rest of the night. Every transition that we have, so a transition between meetings, between rooms, even between thoughts, it is a little mini threshold, and it offers us an opportunity to very briefly, for a second, half a second, take stock of where we are. So these threshold moments can be really useful tools in our day. When we are moving from one task to the next, when we are moving from one place to the next, we can notice that, we can observe that, and we can simply note in our minds, I am here. It's as simple as that. No one needs to know that we're doing it. It takes no more than a second. But as we begin to train ourselves to acknowledge those threshold moments, as we begin to cultivate this threshold awareness, something really significant begins to happen. We begin to develop a greater sense of presence in the moment. Okay, so first practice here is your to-be list. Your second practice here is practicing threshold awareness. And your third practice, this is a fun one, but it's probably the hardest one as well, is giving yourself 1 hour per week for what I call sacred uselessness. Julia Cameron refers to this in her great book, The Artist's Way, as the weekly artist date, where you do something that is just for you. Just going to a gallery or a fabric shop or sitting on a park bench and observing, just finding that 1 hour where you do something that has no utility at all. It is not explicitly for your growth. It's not for your productivity. It's not even maybe for your self-care. It's just for a sense of aliveness. Maybe it's reading poetry or sitting under a tree or doing a breathwork class or going for a walk. That hour gives you time to breathe. And even though I've said that it's not about self-care, that it's not about utility, that hour that you dedicate each week to sacred uselessness is over time going to be one of the most important hours you spend, because it is beginning to realign your consciousness toward the sacred, beginning to turn away from a view of time and productivity that tells us that there is never enough, that there is never enough time, there's never enough money, there's never enough resource, there's never enough anything. When we have this hour in our week, we realize that that is all that we need in that moment. This isn't a rejection of goals or ambitions. I love setting goals. I have ambitions, and I have other videos where I talk about how we can mindfully set goals and remain attuned to the bigger vision while still growing through a progressive form of self-development. It's not about getting rid of all of that. These three practices are an invitation to reroute them in a different way, to really acknowledge how your mind, body, and spirit understands time and how it is moving through time. Because the question isn't, how do I get more stuff done? The much bigger question is, what is this all for? And who do I want to be while I am here? And sometimes just acknowledging those questions is the beginning point. We won't have the answers to that immediately, but acknowledging that big question begins us on a path to awakening and awareness. So, this isn't about productivity and lists and projects and time management. It's just about a deeper form of honesty and a recognition of the sacredness of time. Let me know in the comments below how you are getting on with these three practices. And until I see you next time, stay well and stay mindful.